This is the HD Radio Show with Bryan Hyde.
Good afternoon and welcome to the HD Radio Show. You know, over the years, I have had the opportunity to interview a lot of really interesting people, but I don't know if anybody has turned as many heads or caused as many people to sit up and take notice as the guest who I have on the telephone with me right now. I have Julie Rowe joining me. Julie, welcome back to the HD Radio Show.
Thank you, Bryan.
So what was it, May? I think it was May last time you and I talked. So it's been a few months.
I believe it was May 3rd or somewhere near there.
Okay. And, you know, for those who don't know you, I should probably take a minute here so that we can get them properly acquainted with you. Julie Rowe had a series of near-death experiences some years ago, and you have been what I think I would label a voice of warning here in the last year and a half or so. Would you mind explaining just a little bit about who you are and what you feel your mission is?
Sure, Bryan. Before I get started, if that's okay, if I can just take a couple of minutes, this is answering your question, but I want to kind of make a preemptive strike, if you will. That verbiage has triggered quite a few people. I guess some news got out on Facebook and some other websites about this very important warning today. And I'm going to say, forgive me for my emotions. Sorry, I can't contain it. And I'm not supposed to. I send my love to all within the sound of my voice and say to you, this is a warning. I also say I love and testify of our Savior, Jesus Christ. I know He is real. He is in our presence on a very regular basis. That might be the biggest introduction I could give as to why I'm doing this. I also need to make it very clear that I've lost about 50% of my hearing in the last year. I have earbuds in, but I've got an echo in my basement where we are. And so if people can't hear what I'm saying, I apologize. I'm doing the best I can with this mission.
Actually, you sound just fine. I remember our conversation back in May, and you had indicated there is a wake-up coming, and you particularly had mentioned for the Wasatch Front. Now I believe
the word was imminent.
Yes.
In the Lord's time, not the next day.
And so
now I say it is soon.
So there have been people, myself included, who have been very aware of what's happening seismologically around the country, and anyway, last time we talked. We had mentioned, well, we'll talk after this wake-up event or maybe closer to the election. The election has come and gone. At this point, it appears so far we're still waiting for some kind of seismic event along the Wasatch Front. What is your feeling right now as far as how things are moving along?
My feeling is that my heart is very full. My heart is weighted down. But it's very full of my love for the Savior and of His eternal plan, and I'm probably going to cry for this whole thing. I'm sorry. But it's very close. Very, 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 very close.
There is one thing I would like to ask you right at the beginning of our conversation, and that is I have somehow, word got out pretty quick that you were going to be on the show today, and I started getting emails from people. So is it true Julie Rowe is going to be on? And I know you're no stranger to people who are antagonistic. But
right.
One of them was like, so are you having the prophetess on? And I wanted to ask you, please address, I understand the person is using it in a pejorative fashion, but to my understanding, you do not represent yourself as a prophet or prophetess, do you?
I do not, but I will say that gift of prophecy is real. And that it's a spiritual gift that can be given to any and all people if it is part of the Lord's plan for them. but that we have true prophets and apostles living on this earth.
Now, you've written a series of books discussing some of the events that are to come prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And I'm just going to ask you if you would explain why is it important that people understand some of these events or recognize them for what they are? And is this something that you feel that you are called to testify to?
Yes, that's a layered question. I'll try to answer it in the order in which it was given. I'll try to answer it to the best of my ability with what I understand I can communicate effectively right now, hopefully to those who are listening and willing with open heart, or even just a nugget of potential, which I believe all of us have, wherever they may be within the sound of my voice. I say to you that Christ is real, and absolutely I have a calling, as do each of us who have come to this earth and accepted his plan. And while we have varying degrees of understanding and even a variation in knowledge or belief, I am here as one of many of God's servants to bridge the gap within various sects as an SECTS of society. And that includes different religions, different denominations, and those who are not of the LDS faith, which I am a member, and those who do not have any religion at all currently on this planet or elsewhere. That is in part my mission, and I accept it wholeheartedly.
Now, historically, though, people who have been called upon to speak truth have not always been well received, and I'm deliberately understating that.
There's a pattern with that, yeah, you could say.
In fact, in times such as ours, people who speak truth, and I mean any kind of truth, can find themselves very unpopular.
Scientific truth. We've had a lot of scientists in years past that have been, people once believed something about the earth being flat versus round, and there's different theories on even what's going on in the earth right now. So our time is no different.
So, Julie, we're going to have to take a break here in about 90 seconds or so, but before we go there, I just want to get this right out in the open. Why do you do what you do?
Because I love the Lord, and I love his children, and I consider everyone my brother and sister, even if they don't love me back. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. So when you speak these kind of things, you're not doing it out of a sense of, hey, I know something you don't, and I'm going to scare you to death with it. There's a purpose behind the warnings that you give, correct?
Yeah, we can call that God's purpose. And I'm just the messenger, one of many that have come before and one of many that will come still. And I'm hoping that my courage to come forth with my story will open hearts and help heal some people, give them the courage to be who they really are too.
Okay, on that note, we're going to take a very quick break here. Julie Rowe is my guest by telephone. I would encourage you, if you haven't checked out her website, julieroweprepare.com, take the time to do it. You'll find plenty of blog posts. You'll find information about the books she's written. We're going to come back and continue our conversation with her here in just a few moments on the HD Radio Show. Good afternoon and welcome to the HD Radio Show. I have author Julie Rowe on the phone with me today. And for those who aren't familiar with her, Julie had a series of near-death experiences a few years ago and has written a series of books urging people to prepare and also warning them that we are in a very interesting time in human history. And Julie, I know that there's a purpose for why you sound the voice of warning that you do. What do you want people to understand? What's the most important thing that you can communicate to them since you have their ear?
The most important thing I can communicate is that God loves them with all of his heart, and he wants them to come home. And that happens in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it comes through actual physical death. And often prior to that, it's him calling us to become one of his elected, if you will. Him calling us to help our brothers and sisters to save lives and give hope. Him calling us to reach out to our neighbor and serve. Him calling us to be the best we can be. I'm here to testify of this truth as he has called me, as I've been willing to endure scrutiny and other analysis, if you will, and it's been given to me to understand that I have an opportunity to learn to develop and receive the gift of charity. And I can tell you that I'm much closer in receiving that gift I asked for in 2004 than I was even 2 weeks ago or even yesterday, as I have seen his hand of mercy and soon his hand of justice coming into fruition. And in my own life, have seen the blessings and the outpouring of love of friends and family alike on both sides of the veil, wherever they may be, extending their love and support to me because they're true friends and true followers and true servants of the living God, no matter what religion or lack of religion one professes at a given time.
Talk to me.
I know that he loves me because he brings angels into my life that are real people that come and testify to me that I can do this mission. And they testify to me that I'm worth it and that I have worthy goals and that I am not worthless and that I have value, not just in his eyes, but in theirs. And that if I keep my eye on the mark, which is true salvation and freedom, as our agency, even as we speak, is being stripped from us here on earth and especially in the United States, that the times of turmoil that have been foreseen by me and many others on this planet and elsewhere are soon at hand, even nigh at hand.
Talk to me about the state of the world. Because I know there are a lot of people breathing a sigh of relief. For a week now, they're like, oh, well, Hillary didn't win, so now we're feeling pretty secure. Like, hey, maybe there's been a reset of sorts. But in the most general sense, as we look at the state of the world, where do we stand?
The first domino is falling. We have lightning bolts tonight, and the cards are stacked against Trump Tower, which means to me a series of things. But the most basic level is we haven't seen the end of Trump or Hillary or Obama or the puppet masters that guide them and even control them.
So the lull that we're experiencing right now is temporary.
It's the calm before the storm, even though it's chaotic. It's nothing for what's coming in the next day or two.
Can you speak more specifically about what you see coming?
Well, the Ring of Fire has recently come alive. Anyone that's read my books knows a little bit about that, to which I won't give more detail. I'm not here to predict earthquakes or any other natural disaster. I'm here to testify to you that it's nigh at hand. And that I can't say exactly when it is, but I can say to you that I see in the coming days election polls being protested, riots in the streets, EBT cards not working, Black Friday being very dark, and Obsidian Monday just around the corner.
Interesting. I know that the earthquake in New Zealand, and then there was another one in Argentina, definitely were getting people's attention. Maybe it's because since our last conversation, I've just been a little more cognizant of earthquakes within the lower 48, the continental U.S. Central
Especially in your own state in Utah, right? You're in southern Utah, but
I'm
got a lot of people serving as watchdogs, looking out for some big ones coming up around the corner.
And while I don't think we've seen a lot of seismic activity. We've had some minor ones here and there, but in the middle part of America, particularly around Oklahoma, it sounds like there's been considerable activity.
Well, I live in Kansas now, and anybody who's read my book knows that I didn't live in Kansas. Well, anybody who knows me in my close circle knows I didn't live in Kansas. I lived in Arizona when I wrote the first 2 books, Iowa when I wrote the 3rd one, and that I have since returned. We moved our family on July 1st back to Kansas and moved into our property here in a safe location in August, and I needed to do that before the strikes began against me, as well as several different strikes, everything from an earthquake in the Wasatch or elsewhere to the Ring of Fire really coming alive, which we saw this past weekend, beginning of that, and then also strikes, union strikes and things with protests and civil unrest in Chicago and other major cities on an unprecedented scale.
So
it's extremely surreal and mostly sobering for me. Not as in, like, I drink alcohol sobering. I'm very somber when I think of these things.
Now, and I'm going to go back to you. You emphasized at the very beginning of our conversation that above all, you want people to remember God really does love them. And I just want to clarify: is this in part to help them understand that though difficult times and very difficult situations may be ahead, that doesn't mean that God has turned His back on them?
Not only has He not turned His back, He's front, forward, and facing its center, with His arms extended, begging them to come to Him for relief, begging Him to come to Him as His arms of mercy are extended and truth prevails, begging them to hear His voice and mine, and any other person who's willing to listen and open their heart to their own potential and that of the infinite atonement, because that's the only way. And He wants us home. He wants us, whether we're coming home tomorrow or next week or next year or in a decade, or whenever we come home, either physically or spiritually, it's never too late.
We didn't talk a whole lot about the election in our previous conversation back in May. Now that it's come and gone, are there any thoughts you have? I mean, I'll admit I was one of the people who was very surprised. I knew that there was support for Trump. I didn't know that he could pull it off, given the forces that he was up against.
Right. Well, I guess you could say I was shown algorithms that come into play with exit polls, preemptive strikes, and things that were set up with certain members of the cabinet and the White House and those pretending to be in the White House clinking wine glasses and champagne glasses behind the scenes as they set up the American people in hopes of confiscating our freedoms and pledging to each other through blood oaths that they would fool the American people who they claim are stupid, lazy, and dumb. Those are not my words. That's what I was shown and heard that Trump and Hillary and Bill and a bunch of the other quote-unquote big dogs think of themselves and the American people.
Well, it does seem very clear that the divide between the elite ruling class and the rest of the people has never been more clear. We're going to take a real quick time out here. We're going to pay a couple of bills. Julie Rowe is my guest. We will continue our conversation just the other side of these commercial messages. Good afternoon and welcome to the HD Radio Show. Julie Rowe is my guest by telephone. And Julie, I want to relate to you. I took a call off the air during our break, and there was a caller who had called to express concern, and he said, "I really feel strongly, Bryan, that your guest is being exploited by you having her on the air. He says, I don't think she is dealing with a full deck. I think she is being exploited, and you're doing this for ratings. He was very kind about it. He was not being mean or vindictive, but I want to put that before you and give you a chance to respond. I know that you have had your share of critics, and that is definitely one of the approaches they have taken. So I will let you speak for yourself as far as exploitation or no.
Thank you, Brian, and I appreciate the caller. I have wanted to address this question for a long time and didn't feel that the time was right until right now, because the time is now to prepare for tomorrow. And what I mean by that in part is that some may say I don't deal with a full deck, and it is true that I deal with mental illness. That's pretty obvious to anyone on my board or those that work closely with me, that I have Lyme disease and I deal with a number of other diagnoses and labels from people outside of, I guess you could say, my trusted circle. They've also lived with me, my husband and my children. My husband and I have been married over 20 years. My closest family members know all too well what it's like for me to be dealing with these health issues, and to varying degrees inside my circle of trust. It is horrendous. While I would not wish this upon my worst enemy, I also would not take it back, because it is my mission. And that might sound like crazy talk to people who don't live inside of my body and my brain and haven't seen the things that I've seen or that I see. But when you see the whole spectrum of light and dark, you don't pick what you choose to see. As in, if I'm going to claim that I saw God, then I think it stands to reason I see Satan too, and just about everything in between. And mental illness is not all it's cracked up to be. And there are a lot of people with mental illness, and there are going to be a lot more in the coming days when they decide to take medications away and other modern amenities that we have that help us keep sanity in an already very chaotic world.
Well, I think
and if I can serve as a voice and a warning and a poster child and a cover girl and a cover story for a mission that I agreed to, that I remember because I've been in spaces and mansions in heaven that my Father has allowed me to travel to, then I testify to you that anyone on this planet, God willing, if it's in their plan, can overcome everything from mental illness to diabetes to heart attack to paralysis and any other ailment that I've suffered through in the last 12 years, including seizure. That's a funny word, isn't it? Seizure? Who's seizing your mind, guys? And the play on words that I speak is for real. People have talked about encrypted or decoded or decoded language. It's purposeful. I do it on a purposeful nature, because nature is not only ordained of God, it was created for us to become our true nature, which is divine. We are not patterned after the devil. We are patterned after our loving God, and he absconded and he counterfeits. And those within the sound of my voice that can hear me, I say to you, I volunteered. And I know it. Whether you're my brother, my sister, or anyone else, wherever you may be, directly or indirectly related to this message, I volunteered, and I know it without a doubt, because I have had more than a dozen confirmations. I have had more than a dozen NDEs. I have had more than a dozen diagnoses. And guess what? The doctors continue to argue. But the true physician, his voice and his pattern continues to speak to my soul. And when you know the Lord's patterns, while you may doubt, you must be believing and move forward and press on no matter the cost, no matter the risk, because that is who I'm accountable to. And I'm accountable to myself and the American people or anybody else that hear my voice. But when I'm doing what I can, not perfectly, but to the best of my ability that only God himself knows. I don't even know what my best ability is, and only God himself knows. Then who are we to judge? Who am I to judge myself? I can't even judge anyone else, let alone myself. That's why God does. So I would ask anybody in the sound of my voice, just quit judging each other. Quit being so mean. If how you're treating me is any indication of your heart, you'll have an idea of where you stand. I have an idea of where I stand when I invoke upon myself and upon this population within the sound of my voice, the powers of God, and say, let's stop the arguing. Let's stop the bickering. Let's come together as a people united truly, not what the Trumps and the Hillarys say, not what the Obamas make up. Let's come together united as a people that say, I stand as one for agency. I stand for the Constitution of man and womankind because I not only love God, I love myself. And if we want to adhere to the commandments, which are first to have faith in the Lord Jesus Christ and to love God above nothing else, and second, to love our neighbor like unto ourselves, well, it's really hard to love somebody else as our neighbor if we don't love who we are. And I look at people who are mean to me or anyone else, and I say, let's table that right now, because I am not in their body. I'm not in their family. I don't understand their perspective. I haven't been through what they've been through, and I haven't walked in their shoes. So no judgment here. I'm going to extend love and ask God to extend his mercy as they try to figure it out like I'm trying to figure it out. And if we do that for each other more often on a real, genuine level, then we can regain our agency in full measure. And if we do not, destruction comes, no matter where we are. And there is no other route to success than to forgive ourselves first so we can forgive those who hurt or offend or lie or make false accusations, because they too are imperfect beings and either have rose-colored glasses on or very dark glasses to where they can't see outside of themselves because of their own hurt and pain. And I am not here to cast stones at anyone, and I would ask, if you want to throw the stone, I'm willing to let it come my direction. I've already taken plenty. But I would beg of you, think first before you cast the first stone, because when Christ drew that circle with a line through it with the adulteress or any other sinner that came upon him, he always talked in parables that were both literal and figurative and relative to our day. And nobody was there that lives on this planet right now to know the layering and the depth of what he really communicated to those people. And those records were not complete. But there will come a day prior to his coming for a second time, which I testify will happen, when 144,000 will return and the tribes of Israel that have been lost will come upon this planet, wherever they come from, and they will bring with them records, as we will as well. And this will be a testimony to you, for and against you, of what you did and didn't know, as only the Holy Spirit testifies to a man's soul and none else. And I don't judge. I try not to judge. I have been judgmental. But I hope that I can discern, because for me and each of us, wherever we may be, it is a matter of life and death, both spiritually and temporally speaking, and we cannot separate the spirit from the body. We are eternal beings. And that's my testimony, and that is my strength. That is my point of view, and the truth as I know it thus far. And I hope that one day I can go back to worlds without number that I've traveled to, and I can go to both the light and the dark, and I can do missionary work like I've been able to do on this planet and elsewhere. And I hope that I can be diligent with the promises given to me and promises I've made, because I know that a lot is at stake here, and we have to strengthen our stakes. not tear them out and throw them aside.
Okay, Julie, I got to stop you here because we've got to take a break. Hold that thought. We'll be back right after these messages. Good afternoon and welcome to the HD Radio Show. My guest this hour is Julie Rowe. She is joining me by telephone. She is an author and has a message that I know has resonated with a lot of people. Not only about the purpose of life, but what lies ahead in our near future. And Julie, if I could impose on you here for the last few minutes that we're going to be chatting, let's talk a little bit about some of the milestones that lie ahead of us, particularly within the next few weeks.
Okay. The first one I see coming up very soon, I need to change the verbiage, not see, because there's layers there. See, in my circumstance, I see, I hear, I feel, I believe, I understand, I know. And there's varying degrees of my understanding based on where we are in my plan for what the other side will teach me or teach us. So I understand that Donald Trump is going to get shot, that the last quote-unquote attempt was fake to rile the crowds. This next one might be too. I don't know if he actually really gets shot or if they just bandage him up, and I think it's on the left side, around the heart and the chest, which is symbolic. Also, we've got poison in the picture. I'm not going to disclose that. I need to be careful that I can stay alive and not misconstrue the message or cause undue fear or unnecessary unrest. I don't want to be a part of the unrest and civil disobedience or charges made that I am conspiring to in any way work for any side. I want to stay center point and help bridge the gap between those on both sides of the political arena. And that's why I won't discuss who I voted for, where I voted, how I voted, or any of that. At least not at this point. But I do see and understand and feel and believe that Obsidian Monday is coming very soon, and Black Friday is significant. It'll be people need to do their best not to get upset when EBT machines and cards or whatever, welfare, or if their debits don't work on the biggest shopping day in America. And I would encourage you to stock up where necessary without going into debt on water tonight and toilet paper and some of the necessities if you knew that between now and the next few days or within the next 2 weeks between now and Black Friday, you might have difficulty buying supplies wherever you are in the United States, because not only is the Ring of Fire alive, but we've got a lot of chaos coming in a very short order.
Do you see that as being widespread chaos, or is it going to be limited to more?
Widespread throughout the United States for varying purposes, both man-made as well as natural catastrophes. And then we get through Black Friday going into the weekend. We'll break it up between that and maybe the first part of December, and I see, understand, feel, and hear, and believe and know that between now and Christmas we'll see more of the same in Chicago, Houston, and bigger cities where riots will ensue on a point that murders will become apparently rampant in some of those cities where they haven't been on this scale before, because martial law is now in order according to the Clintons and the Trumps as Trump towers and bombs and other things go off.
Wow.
That lies in wait for nuclear explosions next year around this time. If we break it down, let's just focus between now and January 20th as inauguration approaches with what they'll call martial law, but it's not their full-scale martial law. It's just to control and try to manipulate and cause fear in the American people again. And I don't want to be a cause of that. I want to warn people that when they do it, don't be afraid, be smart. And being smart means Don't go into more debt just because it's Christmas. But be generous from your heart and serve each other. That means at Christmas time, let's seriously, maybe for us, some of us, for the first time, let's try to really focus on the real meaning of the holiday. And it's not about what we buy, it's about what we give from the heart. And that might just mean coming to help somebody clean up or find a lost loved one in the Wasatch. Also, if you're in Chicago, know that God loves you, and that it's not too late, and that you don't have to take part in the civil unrest that's there, even if others are doing it. Even if you've previously been paid to do that, give up that paycheck, and God will provide. Whether that's there or Houston or LA or any other big city or small country town, or whether you live in the country, wherever you are, when you give everything to God, He alone can help you become way better. I speak from experience. I mess up everything I do on my own. People know that know me. But when I give it to God, somehow He miraculously takes this weak vessel and says, let's make something out of this craziness that's going to benefit all of mankind. And one day, the record will show that she spoke the truth, even though she had a crazy brain.
Well, and I'm going to put this out there just for the sake of, especially the earlier caller who was very concerned that perhaps I'm just exploiting you. I have learned in my life that truth can come from some unlikely sources. And I would be more willing to take a chance. I'm willing to stick my neck out and take a chance that truth is coming from this unlikely source named Julie Rowe, than to simply dismiss it out of hand because I'm so much smarter and I know I don't need anybody's help. So
like God doesn't work that way. I love that one when I get those emails, by the way. You're not of God. You're a pawn of the devil. God doesn't work that way. And I think, wow, they must know a lot more than I do, because He's been working some magic that I had no idea was possible on this planet.
Julie, we gotta wrap it up here. Thank you so much for being on the show, and I will have the podcast for this posted in just a little bit.